Hello again. It seems my video about the 9 parts of speech got a little long, so I'm cutting it into videos about each part of speech, just a short 10-minute video. And this one's going to be about adjectives. So hopefully you watched the video about nouns. If you didn't, then maybe you know everything about nouns, and then you can look at adjectives because, of course, adjectives are part and parcel with nouns. You can't have an adjective without a noun, right? Or a pronoun, but we'll get to that. So the rule with an adjective is it describes a noun, right? It adds information to a noun. Oops, added an S there. It describes a noun, and that is basically the question you ask every time is, does this describe a noun? It's an adjective. So we'll look at a few examples, right? And there are different ways to use adjectives with nouns. So let us see. When we get to an easy one, you say the big elephant. Right. Jumps, even though they can't. And if you look at this, we have our noun. And here is our adjective. So, because elephant, clearly a noun, a thing, and then big tells me the size of the elephant. But you have to be careful. The elephant is big. Okay. Big is still describing elephant. Oops, underline. So big might be after elephant, and it might even be broken up by the verb is, but it's still describing the elephant. And if you look at the word big, it can't be an action. You can't say, oh, he bigs today, teacher, right? That doesn't work, right? It cannot be a verb. So it can't be a noun either. You can't say like, oh, the elephant is a big, right? Does that work? If I put an article in front of it, which is the rule for a noun, it doesn't work. So that can't be true either. So it's not a verb, and it's not a noun, but it is related to this noun, which makes it an adjective. Right. So it can go in the front or it can go in the back. Now, the other thing you need to know is it's not always going to be on its own. I can say the big silly elephant. Right. Right. So here I have big and I have silly. Now, big describes the elephant, and silly also describes the elephant. Right. So you have two adjectives describing one noun. And once again, they can't be verbs. You don't silly. Okay. So even if I say the elephant is big and silly, big and silly are still adjectives. Right. So, and they still describe the elephant. So you can have more than one adjective describing one thing. Be careful of adverbs that describe adjectives, though. If I go, and just stick to the rule. If the word is describing a noun, it's an adjective. It's almost always will work perfectly. If I say the very big elephant, right? Let's separate that one so you can see it clearly. Now, big will still be your adjective here. Big is describing the elephant. But what is very? Let's take the rule. Is very describing the elephant? Let's take the big out. Let's see if, because here I can take out silly. The big, silly elephant. The big elephant still works. But let's see what happens if I take out big in the sentence down here. The very elephant. What? That doesn't work. Right, it doesn't work. And the reason for that is because very is not describing the elephant. Very is describing big. It's saying how big is the elephant? How big? Right, and again, very is not a verb. You can't say I vary today. It's not a noun. You can't say he is a very, right? So be careful of those. Just follow the rule. If the word is describing the noun, then it's an adjective. Right. Okay. Let's look at a few more examples. Now, once you've watched the video on pronouns, you'll know that these are pronouns he, she, they, it, we, all those kind of things. Right. And they act like nouns, they replace nouns, but they don't fall in the category of nouns. They are their own thing. Now, oh, typing's horrible. Now, you might have been told that something like his and your and their are also pronouns. And I'm here to tell you they're not. Right? Not always. In fact, most of the time, what you'll find is if I say he is a teacher, he is a person. It is acting like a noun, and therefore it is a pronoun that replaces a noun, right? But if I say he likes his teacher, now look carefully. Teacher is a noun. He is a pronoun, right? Likes will be your verb. What's this? Think about it. Follow your rules. It is describing the teacher, which makes it an adjective. That's tricky. And it's kind of easy to see why once you think about it. If I put in, well, I don't even need to make a new sentence. I can just put in another one. Let's use the adjectives we used earlier, and I say big, and his big teacher. Or no, let's make it tall. Big sounds a little rude, right? His tall teacher. Do you see they act the same way? It's not showing the size of the teacher. It's just showing that the teacher belongs to him. Well, not belong, but the teacher teaches him. And it's the same if I say they like their teacher. Okay. They being a pronoun and their being a teacher. So be careful of those. Right, those can be a little tricky. They're called possessive adjectives, but for now, until we do those, just treat them like adjectives, because by the rule, they are describing the noun. Okay, let's get to another one that can be a little tricky. I have 5 apples. Right. It's a number. Now, be careful, because 5 is not like big. Big will always be an adjective, whereas 5 will be an adjective if it follows the rule. So 5 is describing the apples. It's telling me how many apples there are, so therefore it is an adjective. Right. But if I say I have 5, then it becomes a noun. Right? So just be careful with those. It's the same with things like I have many apples. Again, many is describing the apples, so it's an adjective, but here it's a noun, and here it is. Here, many is an adjective. Okay, so don't forget about those. But be careful. Let's do one last one. I don't want to confuse you too much, but I have too many apples. Right. Now it gets tricky. Many, still describing apples, which is a noun, and therefore it's an adjective. But too is describing many. I can't say I have two TOO apples. I can say I have two TWO apples. Then it's an adjective, but I can't say I have two apples. Right, it doesn't work. Two is describing many, therefore two here will be an adverb. So just be careful with those. There's two more things I want to deal with adjectives, just so you are clear. The one is, again, always tricky. As soon as something has ing at the end, it can be a lot of things. We've already said it's usually a verb, but it can also be a noun, and it can also be an adjective. So let's just look at that. Right. So if I say he is, let's do dancing this time. Okay. He is dancing. In this case, dancing will be a verb. It will be part of the verb phrase is dancing. If I say he will study dancing, right? Dancing becomes a noun because that's a thing, a subject that he's studying. Oh, I typed dancing again. Okay. But then if I say he likes his dancing partner. Partner is clearly a noun, right? It's a person. And dancing becomes an adjective, right? Because it is describing the noun. So just follow that rule. Adjectives are easy that way. They look tricky, but you need to be careful. So I will never ask you, hey, what part of speech is dancing without putting it in a sentence? Because in the context, it can be a verb, it can be a noun, it can be an adjective. So I mean, it's a special noun, of course. It's not a normal noun, it's a gerund, but so just be careful of these with ing. The normal rule is that if there is a linking verb or an auxiliary verb like is, was, were, then it's usually a verb. And if it's standing on its own, then it's a noun. And if it is standing in front of a noun, then it's usually an adjective. And of course, his here will also be an adjective because it's also describing the partner. Okay? I know this video is getting a little long, so let's just look at one last thing. Okay? Now you know all the interrogatives, right? If you watch the video on interrogatives, I go through them. What, who, when, where, why, how, which, what am I missing? Whose, and all right, if I'm missing one, I'm missing one. Right, these are your interrogatives. Now, usually, they act as pronouns because they replace a noun, right? I say, he has a pen. And if I then change that to a question, I say, what does he have? You can clearly see that what replaces pen. Okay. That, in that case, you have a pronoun replacing a noun. But why am I talking about this when we're talking about adjectives? Follow the rule. Follow this rule. Always follow this rule. It will help you to make sure that you're doing this correctly. If a word is describing a noun, it is an adjective. It doesn't matter what that word is. So if I say, what phone does he have? He has an iPhone. Right. Now look carefully. Phone and iPhone are nouns. And I didn't really use what to replace phone. I replaced phone with iPhone. So what is on its own here? It doesn't replace anything that is in the answer. In fact, what it is doing is it is describing the phone. What phone? Right. So in this case, what becomes, oops, that's a horrible color. You can't see that. Right. What becomes an adjective. Okay. So it can be the same for a few other ones. I can say whose phone does he have? He has my phone. This one actually makes it a little easier because in this case you can see that whose is replacing my. Okay, so whose is replacing another adjective because my is not a pronoun. My is describing the noun phone. So that makes it a little easier. You can see here whose is describing the phone, my is describing the phone. So whose has to be an adjective and my has to be an adjective. Okay. You can even have things like which, right? You can say, which train should I take, right? And it becomes, you should take the 11. You should take the, let's say, number 3 train. Okay, you should take the number 3 train. Right, so which, again, is an adjective which describes train. Okay, and the number 3 train, you can see as well, describes the train again. Okay, I know that's a long video about adjectives, but adjectives are very important. You need to be able to recognize them. I might ask you to come up with adjectives to describe something, and then if you use something that's not an adjective, then you're not going to get that point. So I'll upload an activity where you have to find the adjectives in a form, and please do that to review it so that you can clearly know how to find an adjective, which words can be adjectives, and which ones will not be. Okay?